So many of you may have traveled many hours to get here today. You might be tired. You might be feeling a bit stressed. So if you do notice any tension, tiredness, discomfort in your body, see if you can let it go. Let it melt, flow out of you, drain out of you. And you can imagine it sinking into the earth below, disappearing there. Or you can imagine it just evaporating in space and disappearing. And if there are any thoughts in your mind left over from things that you did today or yesterday or any time in the past, let them go, put them aside for now. Do the same with any thoughts about the future. If you have any worries or plans, so anything related to the future, put those thoughts aside as well. And just let your mind be right here in the present moment, present place. Being aware of the breathing, your breath coming in and going out, is a helpful way to be in the present, because our breath is right here, right now. So just with your mind, be aware of the natural rhythm of the breath coming in and going out. Any time the mind wanders away from the breath, from the present, just gently bring it back. Let go of that other thought or distraction, whatever it may be. It's impermanent, transitory, so you can let it go and come back to the breath, come back to the present. And again, whenever you notice your mind is not paying attention to the breath, but doing something else, just gently disengage from that other object or activity and come back to the breath. The breath is always there, coming in, going out, so it's relatively easy to just keep coming back to the breath whenever the mind wanders away. Before you open your eyes, let's take a few more minutes to look at our motivation and, if necessary, make adjustments to our motivation to try to have the most positive motivation we can. So just go into your mind and be honest with yourself as to why you're here. What's your reason for being here? Participating in this retreat or in this session tonight. So the Tibetan Lamas always emphasize the importance of motivation. They say it's like the steering wheel of a car. And depending on which way you turn the wheel, you will go in different directions. So in a similar way, anything that we do, any activity we do, even ordinary activities like eating and sleeping and working, but most importantly, spiritual activities such as doing meditation or learning spiritual teachings, whether these activities will bring more peace and happiness and benefit or not, or will even bring problems, depends mainly on our motivation, why we're doing these activities. Naturally, we want happiness and peace, success, good experiences. And if we want those, we have to make sure that our motivation is good and positive. So the best motivation one could have is what we call altruism, meaning concern not only about me, this one person, but about others as well, as many other people and beings as possible. Having an open mind and open heart to others, understanding they want to be happy just as we do, and they don't want to suffer just as we don't. And being moved by that, concerned about that, and wanting to do what we can to bring them more happiness and help them be relieved of suffering. The very best altruistic motivation is wishing to become a Buddha, fully enlightened, fully awakened. This is the highest development of the mind that is possible. And the whole reason or purpose for becoming a Buddha is to be able to help others. One has incredible, amazing abilities, powers, energy, and of course, love and compassion and wisdom with which to help others. So some of you may be familiar with this idea, comfortable with it, and you can make that your motivation. So you can think, the reason I'm here tonight, participating in this session, or if you're doing the whole retreat, I'm doing this retreat in order to get closer to enlightenment, create the causes for enlightenment so that I can help all living beings. But some of you may not be so familiar with that idea or comfortable with it. For example, you might not be sure that there really is such a thing as enlightenment, or that you can attain it. So if you're not ready to think, I want to become enlightened to help all living beings, you might still have some other kind of altruistic intention, such as, I want to help others as much as I can. I want to help the world. I want to bring about more peace, happiness, to help relieve suffering. So if you have that kind of feeling, that kind of attitude, you can bring that into your mind and feel the wish that participating in this retreat or in this session tonight will help to bring that about, will help you to be more helpful to others, to the world. And for some of you, even that idea might be difficult, challenging. For example, you might think, wow, I don't really think I can help others very much. I'm such a mess myself. I can't even get myself together. But you could still have some kind of altruistic intention. You could think, I'm here participating in this retreat in order to make my own mind more peaceful and positive. And by the way, even if we don't intend to, if we ourselves are more peaceful, more positive, more happy, we'll be able to share that kind of energy with others. So we will be able to benefit others by working on ourselves. Okay, so if that feels comfortable for you, then you could think, well, by my participating in this retreat, may I help myself to be less confused and unhappy and have fewer disturbing emotions and have more positive emotions and thoughts in my mind. And in that way, I will be happier and I'll be able to help others be happier as well. Okay, so you can open your eyes, relax. We'll do some more meditation later, but that was just by way of generating motivation. So my understanding is that most of the people attending this retreat have quite a bit of retreat experience. You've done retreats before. Maybe you've even done this kind of retreat, concentration retreat. So you're quite familiar with this kind of practice and teachings. But I think there are also a few newish people who haven't done retreats before. Is that correct? I see somebody nodding. Yeah. Okay, so in approaching this topic, I will be explaining it in a basic way for those who are unfamiliar, those who are new. So those who are more experienced, who've heard it all before, try to be patient. Try not to have the attitude, oh, I know all this. Because even if we hear things that we've heard before, it doesn't hurt to hear them again. Yeah, especially these kind of teachings. It's really important to hear them again and again, to read them again and again, to study them again and again. It sort of makes them sink deeper in our mind. And also you might learn something new, something you hadn't learned before. So try to keep your mind open and, patient with material you may have heard before. So this point about motivation, again, for those who are new to Buddhism or to Tibetan Buddhism, as I said, this is something that the Tibetan lamas talk about a lot and emphasize a lot. And it does make a lot of sense, that depending on what's in our mind, the kind of thoughts, feelings, attitudes we have in our mind when we go into an activity like a retreat, then that will affect the outcome. That will affect the experiences we have while we're here, but also the longer term results. Okay, and that's mainly what the Tibetan lamas are talking about. They're thinking about the more long-term results for later in this life and future lives as well, because Buddhism believes in multiple lives, not just one single life, this life alone, but we have many future lives, and the things that we are doing in this lifetime will determine our experiences in future lives. So it's like we are the creators of our own experiences, not some external creator like a god, but it's our own mind. Mainly the mind, the kind of thoughts and attitudes we have in our mind. So that's the creator. There's actually statements to that effect in the Buddha's teachings, that the mind is the creator. Our mind is the creator of our own experiences. So if we think about what kind of experiences we want to have in the future, tomorrow, next week, next year, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, the end of our life, next life, if you are able to believe that, I think naturally we want good experiences. We want happiness. We don't want suffering and problems, misery, depression, and so on and so forth. We want good things to happen to us. And we want to be in good situations. So if that is what we want, it's up to us to create the causes for that. It's not up to the government. It's not up to some external creator. It's not up to our family and friends. It's up to our own mind. That's the main factor. The main thing responsible for our experiences is our own mind. And this is a big topic. Okay, so we can spend the whole retreat just talking about that. The mind, what is the mind, and how the mind is the creator, and so on. But that's not the purpose of this retreat. So we won't go into that. But anyway, talking about that because of this whole idea of motivation. So whenever we do anything, there's always a motivation. There's always an intention, a reason why we're doing it. Okay. Sometimes we're not always aware of what our motivation is. It's there, kind of under the surface. You know, it's moving us, but we're not fully aware of that. So it's useful to be aware of our motivations. Why am I doing the things that I'm doing? And to be honest about it. Don't deny, you know, if you have some motivation that's not so positive. You know, don't pretend it's not there. If it's there, be honest about it. And the good thing is we can always change our motivation. So even if we have a negative motivation or a neutral or confused motivation, like, you know, some people may feel, well, I don't really know why I came here. I just felt like coming. Yeah, I just felt drawn to come to this place, but I don't really know why. Or some people may think, oh, well, my friend was coming and I didn't want to be alone this weekend, so I came along with my friend. So, I mean, those motivations aren't really bad, but they're just a bit confused, a bit wishy-washy. Yeah, so it's not quite sure what kind of outcome there will be with such motivations. And there are negative motivations that are really unsuitable. I've met or heard of a few people who were interested in learning meditation with the idea of then becoming some kind of a motivational speaker or teaching courses and charging a lot of money and making a lot of money and becoming kind of rich and famous. Yeah. So that isn't suitable. That's not the right motivation to have, because that's just thinking about me. So it's kind of very self-centered and very materialistic. You know, I want to be rich. I want to be famous. I want to have a lot of people looking at me with adoration and, you know, anyway. So that kind of motivation is definitely not correct. And there could even be worse motivations. I don't know if this is possible, but some people might think, I want to learn meditation so I can develop a really powerful mind and be able to control other people. and manipulate people, get them to do what I want, or even harm people. It's possible. So that's definitely not correct motivation. So we should always try to have a motivation that includes the wish to benefit and not harm, to benefit not only me, but others as well, as many other people and beings as possible. That's what we call altruism, the altruistic motivation. And as I mentioned, the highest form of altruism is wishing to benefit all living beings and wishing to bring oneself to the state of enlightenment, Buddhahood, awakening. It's the highest state that is possible. And reaching that state means you can be beneficial to all living beings. So that's the real goal of the Mahayana Buddhist path. So those of us who are studying, practicing, and following that path, that's our goal. Our goal is becoming a Buddha, just like the Buddha. But it may take a while learning about that, thinking about that, meditating on it before you feel that's what you would like to do. So if you don't feel ready to, aim for Buddhahood yet, that's fine. Take your time. But even if we're not at that point, we can still have some kind of altruistic intention, as I mentioned, I think we all do feel, at least sometimes, that we would like to benefit the world. We would like to help others. We want to bring more peace, more happiness, be able to help others who are suffering. So I think we all have that kind of feeling sometimes. Yeah? So, and of course, some people are dedicating their lives to that. Some people are, involved in an occupation where they are helping others, medically or psychologically or socially. So for you, it's probably quite easy to bring that attitude into your mind. And then you can connect the practice of meditation with that intention. I want to learn meditation, practice meditation, work on my mind so that I can bring more benefit, more positive energy to the people in my life, the people I work with, my patients, my clients, and as many people as possible. Okay, so this is the type of motivation we are recommended to have. And what I have found helpful for me is to formulate a phrase or a couple of phrases that express my motivation, my intention for why I'm meditating or why I'm doing anything that I do. And then I just repeat those to myself at the start of a meditation session. Okay, so there are standard prayers and phrases that you can use that were composed by somebody else, but feel free to compose your own, to put it in your own words, something that really feels right to you, really comes from your heart. And then just keep repeating that. Make that part of your, when you get up in the morning, you can generate that motivation, bring that motivation into your mind and think that's why I'm doing the things that I do today. And especially in this kind of situation where we're doing meditation, which is meant to be beneficial for ourselves and others. So it's especially important that we make sure we're doing what we do with a positive motivation. Okay, so I'll leave a bit of time at the end of this class tonight if you have any questions. So just hang on to your questions. So the topic of this retreat is concentration. And what we're going to be doing, you've probably seen the schedule, part of the time will be talks. I'll give talks, and part of the time we'll do meditation together, sometimes during my talks, sometimes in the sessions with the other Sangha, the other monastics here. There'll also be time for question and answer in the afternoon. And of course, eating and sleeping and drinking tea and going for walks and so on. So this is what we're going to be doing for the next couple of days. And in the talks, I will explain the type of meditation that we're doing, which we call concentration. And I actually made a handout. But no, we don't. Yeah, we can leave it for tomorrow. We'll deal with that tomorrow. So I'll just give some general comments tonight. So concentration is, in technical terms, in Buddhism, we call it a mental factor. It's an aspect of our mind. And just, again, for those who are new to Buddhism, when we talk a lot about mind in Buddhism, mind or consciousness. Mind and consciousness are pretty much interchangeable. They're just two different words for the same thing. And when we talk about mind, we're not talking about the brain, this organ sitting inside of our head. This is in the West, many people think the mind is equivalent to the brain, but not in Buddhism. In Buddhism, we say the mind is a non-physical, non-material phenomena. Okay, so it's not the brain. It's not any part of the body, in fact, because it isn't made of matter. It's not made of, cells, molecules, atoms. Okay, so it has no material properties, which means we can't see it. It cannot be seen with our eyes. It can't be touched with our fingers or instruments. So it's non-physical. That makes it a little mysterious, doesn't it? But another quality of the mind is it's that which knows or experiences. So that can help us understand the mind, because our mind is there all the time. Our mind is always knowing something, experiencing something. Like right now at this very moment, most of you have your eyes open. You're seeing me and the other people in the room, the other things in the room, and so on. So that experience of seeing, according to Buddhism, is actually the mind. It's the mind that sees, but of course dependent on the eyes and the brain, the body. Okay, so mind and body are interconnected and interdependent, but still mind is something other than the body, other than the brain. So it's that which sees and hears. So when you're hearing my voice or other sounds, it's your mind that's hearing. It also smells, tastes, feels sensations in the body. So those are what we call our 5 senses, 5 different ways of knowing or experiencing things with our physical senses. And then we also have a 6th sense, or 6th consciousness, we call it. And that includes all of our thoughts, our memories, our emotions, our dreams. Like when we're asleep at night, we have dreams. So we call that the mental consciousness or the mental sense. And so that's also happening right now. As you're listening to my words, as you're looking around the room, you're probably having lots of thoughts popping up in your mind. Maybe some of your thoughts are related to what's happening right here, but some of your thoughts may be about other things, something that happened to you today or last week, or something you're going to do when you leave here at the end of this retreat. Your mind's already there. You might have different emotions, emotional reactions to things I'm saying, or the other people you see in the room, or again, things that happened to you earlier today. Okay, so there's always lots of things going on in our mind. Thoughts, feelings, emotions, memories, associations, plans for the future, and so on and so forth. So constantly, our mind is busy, active, experiencing things. Right? Does that make sense? So all that stuff, all that blah, 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 according to Buddhism, that's our mind. Okay? That's your mind. And it's not the brain. It's connected to the brain. It's connected to our body. It's connected to our senses. But it's something different, something other than just the body and the brain. Okay. So when we practice meditation, we're using our mind, working with our mind. The mind has different parts, different facets, different factors. So we're working with these different factors of the mind. And in a very, very general way, we could say that the whole purpose of meditation is transforming our mind, bringing about changes in our mind, because it can be changed, fortunately. And the kind of transformation that we're trying to bring about is gradually decreasing the factors in the mind or the experiences in the mind that are painful, that are unpleasant, like anger, fear, worry, anxiety, depression, sadness, okay? So all that kind of experience in the mind, which is not pleasant, right? We prefer not to have those. But even though we would wish not to have them, nevertheless, they keep coming up again and again, unwanted, unwelcome. But we can work on the mind and gradually decrease those unpleasant or painful aspects of the mind, and we can increase those aspects of the mind that are pleasant, such as joy and kindness, and compassion and wisdom and clarity, and so on. So in a very general way, we talk about some aspects of the mind that are negative, or negative just means they're unpleasant. They're unpleasant to experience, but also they can bring about more unpleasantness. For example, when we get angry, then our mind can get all caught up in the anger, and then we can express our anger with our words or with our actions, and then if there are other people around, then they will be affected by that, and they may become angry too, or unhappy, or hurt, or whatever. And then they in turn can affect other people. Okay, so one person being angry can lead to a lot of problems for other people, but of course for ourselves as well. That's not really pleasant to be angry. So, so these negative aspects of the mind are those that bring about unhappiness, suffering, problems, difficulties, painful experiences. So we want to work on decreasing those, and eventually, after a lot of work, a lot of time, it's possible to be completely free of them. They're not there anymore at all. No more anger, no more fear, no more jealousy. It is possible. This is what the Buddha did. He said, you can do it too. And then the positive aspects of the mind, those are the ones that are wonderful to feel, like happiness, like kindness, love, joy, patience, compassion, wisdom. So there are these positive aspects of the mind, and they're called that because they bring about good results: happiness, peace, benefit, freedom from suffering. So those aspects of the mind can be cultivated or developed so they are there more of the time, and eventually you can get to the point where they're there all the time. Like in the mind of a Buddha, there's always compassion and love and positive feelings for everybody, every living being, no matter what they do. You never get angry at anybody. It's hard to believe. But anyway, that's said to be possible. Again, it takes a lot of time, but it is possible. But that's far away. But for now, for us, we can learn to work on our mind so that we can have fewer of the disturbing, unpleasant, painful experiences and more of the positive ones. So that's the whole purpose of meditation. And in fact, that's the whole purpose of Buddhism. I've heard the Dalai Lama say that a few times, and I really liked that. That the whole purpose of Buddhism is transforming our mind, bringing about a transformation of our mind, decreasing the negative, increasing the positive aspects of the mind. So I really like that because, Buddhism can be very complicated. There's so many different teachings. As you can see, libraries are full of books and different kinds of practices, prayers and chanting and prostrations and all the different kind of images, different deities, and so many things. So it can seem a bit overwhelming, especially when you're first learning about Buddhism. But if you understand the purpose of all of these things, everything the Buddha taught, everything that's part of Buddhism, it's all for the purpose of bringing about a positive transformation of our mind, so that our mind is more peaceful and happy and has less suffering and problems. And that's what we are able to bring into our interactions and relationships with others as well. So everybody benefits from that. So anyway, that's the purpose of meditation in general. And then there are different kinds of meditations. And one general type of meditation is concentration. But concentration itself is something that I think everybody has. Every person, even animal. There was this little kitten, and the kitten was crouched down on the floor looking at a lizard walking on the wall, and it was like totally focused on this lizard. I was trying to distract it, to get it to look at something else, but it didn't move. It just focused totally on this lizard. Single-pointed concentration. So I think we all have the ability to have concentration at certain times. For example, when you have an exam, if you're a student and you have to take an exam, it's coming up very soon, so, you may have difficulty, but you will try your best to concentrate on that. Or it's probably easiest when we're doing something we really enjoy. Like if you like painting or making things with your hands or playing golf, or, everybody has their things they like to do. So when you're doing something you really enjoy, you really like doing, you probably find it quite easy to get just totally focused on that. And sometimes even, you don't notice that you're hungry, that it's mealtime. You want to just keep going with that. Okay, so that's a certain kind of concentration. So concentration in general is when our mind is able to focus completely, single-pointedly on one thing. And in Buddhism, concentration is actually essential if we wish to practice Buddhism and progress along the path. Concentration is one of the things, not the only thing, but one of the very important things that we need. And I won't go into that so much tonight. I'll do that more tomorrow. What is the place of concentration in Buddhism? Why it's important? I'll leave that for tomorrow. But anyway, it is something that we work on, we cultivate. And so what I'd like to do tonight is just talk about different objects that could be used for cultivating concentration, and then the posture, the way of sitting when doing meditation, again, for those of you who may be new. And then we'll do some meditation together. We'll practice together. So the Buddha himself recommended a number of different objects. So when you do concentration meditation, you choose an object. And some teachers or traditions say you can use anything, any object, even like a candle flame or a rock. Okay. And there are stories of people doing that, developing single-pointed concentration using an object like that. But in the teachings of the Buddha and the masters who transmitted those teachings from the time of the Buddha to the present, they recommend certain types of objects, not just any objects, but there's actually a long list of objects that could be used, and some of these are actually quite complicated. You would have to study a lot to understand them. So we're not going to go into those. But one of the objects that's recommended is the breath. And that's an easy object to use because it's already there. We don't have to study anything to understand the breath. All we have to do is pay attention to our breathing that's coming in and going out. And there's certain benefits to using the breath. What I've heard, I'm not a scientist, but what I've heard is that when we pay attention to our breath, that it has a natural result of becoming more calm. We naturally become more calm. Now that may not happen for everybody. I have heard and read that when some people try to meditate on the breath, they actually get agitated. Okay, so if that happens to you, then maybe it's better to use another object rather than the breath. For example, people who may have suffered from trauma and have post-traumatic stress disorder, if they try to use the breath, it might just trigger off their traumatic memories, painful memories. It's possible. I don't know enough about that. I'm not an expert on that, but I have heard that that's possible. So for some people, the breath may not be an appropriate object, and you might find another object that works better. But I think for many people, it is very helpful for calming down physically. And when our body is calm, our mind will also become more calm. And also, it's an easy object to use because, like I said, it's already there. It's there all the time. Even when we're not paying attention to it, it's there. Whereas other objects, maybe things you need to visualize or bring to mind, think about. And so when your mind isn't paying attention to them, then they go away. But the breath doesn't go away. The breath is like a very faithful friend. It's always there. So even when our mind wanders away, our breath is still there. So it's relatively easy to come back to it. And another object, which is actually recommended by many Tibetan lamas, is an image of the Buddha. And what that means is a mental image, a visualized image of the Buddha. And they say that first you look at either a statue or a picture of the Buddha. Now, most of the sessions will be in the meditation hall. And in there's a very beautiful, there's also an image of the Buddha here, but we'll be doing most of the sessions in the meditation hall. So if you wish, you could use that image, and first look at it, gaze at it, get really, really familiar with all the details, what the image looks like, and then you close your eyes and try to recreate that image in your mind, in your mind's eye, like a visualized image. I mean, this is something we do naturally. Like if I ask you to think of your bedroom, wherever you live, as long as you have a home. Maybe some of you are homeless, I don't know, but if you do have a home, you have a bedroom. If I ask you to close your eyes and think of your bedroom, you can probably do that quite easily. Or if I ask you to think of your favorite food, right? What's your favorite kind of cake or pizza or whatever? It's probably easy to close your eyes and get an image of that type of food. So it's a natural ability of our mind to think in pictures, to see mental images. Although some people are better at it than others, especially like people who are artists or maybe architects who use visual imagery in your work. So for you, it might be really easy to visualize things. Other people have a really, really hard time. Yeah. So So again, if you have a hard time visualizing and you're not able to do it, then, you're welcome to choose some other object. So when it comes to choosing an object, each person is free to decide what object you would like to use for developing concentration. But in this retreat, I'm mainly going to talk about the breath as an object, or the Buddha, image of the Buddha. So tonight we'll use the breath. I'll talk in terms of using the breath as an object. And then tomorrow morning, the meditation session before breakfast, one of the Venerables will lead a visualization of the Buddha, meditation on the Buddha, and describe, what the Buddha looks like. So there you'll have a chance to try out the image of the Buddha. And then during the subsequent sessions, during this weekend, this retreat, when we're just meditating silently, feel free to try either the Buddha, image of the Buddha, or the breath. If you've practiced meditation before, concentration meditation before, and you've used another object, and you're familiar with that object, you're welcome to use that object. Okay. So it is said that if we really want to develop concentration, we need to focus on one object, choose one object, and stay with that one object, and not use a different object every day. But I think in the beginning, when we're still not sure which object to use, I think it's fine to experiment with different objects. And hopefully, eventually, you'll find one that works best for you. Okay, so don't feel that right from the beginning, from the very first time you meditate, you have to stick with that object. Just to give an example, I did a 6-month retreat on calm abiding, developing concentration. And for the first month, I tried to use a visualized object, not the Buddha, but another deity. And I had so many problems. It was so difficult. But I thought, I'll just keep trying, and maybe it will get better. But after a month, it was still very, very, very problematic. And I didn't know how to deal with the problems I was having. So then I thought, okay, I'll try the breath. So then for the next month, I used the breath, and I found it so much easier. I felt like I could really, get somewhere using the breath. So then I wrote to my teacher, and I said, I explained my situation, what had happened, and I said, so what should I do? Should I go back to using that visualized object or use the breath? And if you want me to go back to using that visualized object, please tell me what to do about these problems that I'm having. So I got an answer quite quickly, and he said, just keep using the breath. So I was very relieved about that. So, we're all different. Everyone is different. Our minds are different, our bodies are different, and our karma is different. So what works for one person may not work for someone else. So you shouldn't choose an object just because your friend said so, or your teacher said so, or the book said so. You need to find what works best for you. Okay, so first I'll talk about the posture, and then I'll lead a meditation on concentration, and I'll lead it in terms of using the breath. But again, if you have another object, like some of you may have already tried using the image of the Buddha, and you would like to continue doing that, that's fine. Use that. Or if you've got familiar with some other object, please feel free to use that as well. So the posture, it's said to be good if you can sit cross-legged, but of course that doesn't work for everybody. So it's also fine to sit in a chair. If you are sitting cross-legged, you can cross your legs in whatever way is comfortable. It's recommended that you use the full lotus posture, but not many people are able to do that. So if you can't sit in full lotus, you can use the half lotus posture, where one foot is on the thigh of the opposite leg and the other foot is on the floor. So that's called the half lotus. But for some people, even that may be difficult. So you can just arrange your legs in whatever way is comfortable. that you won't have to move too much during the session. And if you're sitting on a chair, just have your 2 feet flat on the floor, not one leg crossed over the other. And whether you're sitting on a chair or on the floor, the most important thing is keeping the back straight. If you can. Like some of you may have a back injury or disability and you are not able to keep your back straight. So then you just do the best you can. But if you don't have such an injury and you can keep your back straight, then that's good. The reason for that is within our body, there is a kind of psychic nervous system, a system of channels, not physical channels, but psychic ones. And the mind, the energy of the mind is running through these channels. The main channel, it runs right through the center of the body, from the top of the head down to the base of the spine, in front of the spinal cord. So if our back is straight, our spinal cord is straight, then that channel will be straight, and that will enable the mind, the energy of the mind, to move most smoothly, and it will be easier to concentrate. So that may sound rather complicated, but it's something you can probably notice on your own. For example, if you're having a conversation, an important conversation with somebody, or if you're listening to a lecture, if you let your body kind of slouch like this, you'll probably notice your mind also slouches. You're not able to really be as focused and clear as you could be. Whereas if you really sit up straight, it helps your mind to be more awake and alert and attentive. So that's something you can experiment with and try. And I mean, for me, it's quite clear that sitting up straight really does help the mind to be more alert, clear, and focused. Okay, so it's good to do that if you can. But aside from the back being straight, the shoulders should be relaxed. Don't have your shoulders like this, but let them drop and be relaxed. And in fact, relaxation is a very important part of meditation. We should really try our best to be relaxed and not tense. Okay. So what I often do when I'm leading a meditation is ask people to first just check to see if they have any tension in their body, and if they do, try to let it go, let it relax. Because with a more relaxed body, it's easier to focus and meditate. Other points of the posture are, there's different traditions about what you do with your hands. In our tradition, the Tibetan tradition, we're advised to place our hands in our lap with the left on the bottom and the right on the top. And then your palms are facing upwards, your fingers are lined up, and then the 2 thumbs are touching, making a kind of like a little mountain peak. Yeah. And this is said to have an effect on the flow of energy in the body. So it's just more conducive for the energy to flow in the best possible way. Like I say, other traditions have other ways. Like in the Zen tradition, I think it's the opposite. Left on top of right. We do it right on top of left. I don't know if it really matters which way you do it, but that's how I was taught. And then it's recommended to not press your arms against your sides, but leave some space between your arms and the sides of your body. The reason for that is if it's warm, if it's hot weather, having your arms pressed against your sides, heat can build up in your body. And if you get too hot, that can affect your mind and make you more sleepy. You can start to become more sleepy and drowsy. So that's the reason for keeping that space. And then for the head, it said that we shouldn't have our head held up too high, nor dropped too low, but just slightly inclined downwards. Just a slight inclination of our chin downwards. And again, that has a reason. They say if we have our head up too high, that can cause more excitement or restlessness in the mind. And if our neck is too low, that can cause the mind to be kind of dull and dark, lethargic. So just slightly inclined downwards is the best position. The mouth and jaw should be relaxed. And unless you've got sinus problems and you cannot breathe, it's best to have your mouth closed and breathe in and out through your nostrils. That's in our tradition. So have your mouth closed, your teeth loose, not clenched. It's also recommended to have the tip of your tongue touching the roof of the mouth behind the upper teeth. The reason for that is then you won't need to swallow so much. Swallowing can become a disturbance or a distraction when we're meditating. And the eyes, it's actually recommended not to close them completely, because if we do, that can have the effect of sleepiness or dullness, darkness in the mind. So to prevent that, we can have our eyes open just a little and our gaze directed downwards onto whatever's in front of you, your lap or the floor. So having the eyes open a little bit means there's light coming in, and that can help us to stay awake. But having them open just a tiny bit means we will be less likely to see things around us that might distract our attention. I mean, ideally, even though we have our eyes open, so there is some vision happening, but we should try to ignore the things that we see and instead just focus internally on our object of meditation. So that may take a while to learn how to do, but just be aware that even though the eyes may be open, don't pay attention to what you see. Just try to ignore it. Okay, so do your best to sit in that position. If you're not able to adapt all the points of the posture, do as many as you can, because it is important to be comfortable, not sitting in a position that's excruciatingly painful, because then it's hard to meditate. So we want to compromise between comfort but a conducive posture with the back straight, shoulders relaxed, eyes left open a little. And again, with the eyes, if you find it really difficult or uncomfortable to keep the eyes open just a little bit, it is okay to let them close. But if you do close your eyes, just try to be aware if you're starting to nod off, starting to fall asleep. And if you are, then try opening them a little. And then let the breath flow in and out in a natural rhythm. And some people say that when they try to focus on the breathing, they find themselves getting into a control mode and like trying to control the breathing. So that shouldn't happen, ideally. We should notice the breath, be aware of the breath, but without trying to control it. I mean, we don't need to do that because our body knows how to breathe on its own. It's breathing all the time, even when we're asleep or in a coma. Our body's still breathing. So there's no need at all for the mind or the eye to try to control the breathing. So try to let go of or put aside any tendency towards controlling and just let the body breathe. Let your breath be natural. And letting the breath be natural may mean that sometimes you have a longer breath, deeper breath. Sometimes the breath is shorter or more shallow, and that's okay. That's fine. The body knows how to breathe and knows how much it needs to take in. So try to just let go of controlling, let the breath be natural. And then with your mind, be aware of the breath. Try to be aware of the full duration of each inhalation and exhalation. So you're aware of the breath as it's coming in, all the way in, There might be a little pause, and then exhalation. Be aware of the breath going out, and again there might be a little pause. So just try to be fully aware as the breath is coming in and the breath is going out. One breath after another. And if you find it hard to do, if you find it hard to stay focused on the breath, counting can be helpful. One way of counting is, as you're breathing in, just say to yourself, breathing in. As you're breathing out, say to yourself, breathing out, and then count. 1, and then breathing in, breathing out 2, and continue counting. If you're really new, if you've never done this before, just go up to 5, and then start again at 1. If you're a little more experienced, you can go up to 10, or even 20, as you like. It's not necessary to count, you don't have to do it, but it can be helpful just to stay on the breath. And then whenever you notice your mind is not on the breath, but somewhere else, a thought, a sound, another sensation in the body, like your toe, anything other than the breath. Once you've noticed that, let go of that other object, put it aside, and come back to the breath. So let's do that for about 10 minutes. Is that difficult? Come on, be honest. I actually think concentration is kind of an advanced practice. It's not easy. And there's teachings, traditional teachings in the Tibetan tradition and the Indian traditions on how to develop concentration. And they say that when people start to do this kind of practice, they sometimes have the impression that their mind gets more busy when they try to meditate than at other times. So that means even in the past, Tibetans and Indians had that kind of experience. They thought, wow, I thought my mind was okay, and then I started meditating, and all these thoughts. Meditation, they actually think meditation makes their mind more busy, more crazy. Have any of you ever had that impression? Like, I was okay until I started meditating, and now my mind is going completely berserk. Actually, I heard a woman say that once. She said she wanted to learn meditation because she wanted to become more peaceful. But her experience was just the opposite. Meditation didn't make her more peaceful. She had so many more things in her mind. So anyway, the answer to that question or concern is that it's actually not the case that our mind gets more busy when we meditate, but rather when we meditate, we are seeing the way our mind is all the time, and we just don't notice it. So it's all the time. Our mind is busy, running from one thing to another, not able to stay on one thing for more than a few seconds. That's the natural state of our mind. But most of the time we don't notice it because our attention is more out there. We're paying more attention to people, things. Of course, we have so many more things to pay attention to now with all our devices. So there's so many things out there to pay attention to. So we don't pay that much attention to our own mind and what's going on inside. So there's lots of thoughts there all the time, but we just don't notice them. But when we sit down to meditate, we close our eyes, we turn off our phone, we, try to avoid looking at and paying attention to other things outside of ourselves, and we're just paying attention to our object, our breath, or whatever our object is. So in that situation, the busyness of the mind becomes so clear. It's almost like it's projected on a big screen in front of us. We can't avoid it. So if you do have that impression that your mind becomes more busy when you are meditating, understand that it's not true. You're just seeing the busyness of your mind that's always there, but you normally don't notice it. So it's not the case that meditation makes our mind more busy. Is that clear? Don't blame it on meditation. And so if that was the case, even in the past, centuries ago in India and Tibet, I think it's even more the case now with all the things that we have, all the devices. In fact, I read about some study that had been done. I think it may have been Microsoft who did this study to determine people's attention span, how long people are able to stay focused on one thing. And they compared the results with the results from another test 5 years earlier, and they found that human attention span has gone down, even worse than a goldfish. So human beings, goldfish are apparently very distracted. So humans, I don't know if this is true or not, but anyway, that's what they said. Human beings are more distracted than goldfish now. And it's attributed to all these devices, cell phones, internet, computers, and so on and so forth. There's just so many more things to distract us all the time. And so our mind just gets used to jumping from one thing to another so quickly. We just don't have the practice, the training to stay focused on one thing. And even when we're supposed to be concentrating on study, if you're preparing for an exam or writing or creating something, if you really pay attention to your mind, if you really watch what's happening in your mind, you'll probably notice that it isn't really that focused. It is jumping from one thing to another. You have to keep bringing it back again and again and again, right? So it's not really that concentrated. Even when you're watching a football game or reading a novel or something you really enjoy, if you really pay attention, you'll probably see your mind is jumping here and there. So I'm saying this not to discourage you, but just to reassure you. If you found it hard to concentrate, don't worry, it's normal. You're normal, not abnormal. And don't beat yourself up. This is really important because what some people do is when they find it hard to stay focused on the breath or whatever you're trying to meditate on, then you can start getting into self-flagellation, oh, I'm so bad, I'm so horrible, I can't meditate, everybody else is doing really well and I'm the worst one, that kind of thing. Does that ever happen to you? So, okay, so if that happens, don't listen to it. It's not true. Everybody else is having difficulty. There might be some people who are a little better off than you, but it doesn't help. It doesn't help to think that way. It doesn't help to beat yourself up and feel you're the worst. You're probably not the worst. I am. And it's something that can be changed. That's the good thing. We can work on our mind and learn to increase our concentration. And that's why we're here this weekend. We only have a couple of days, so don't expect too much. I mean, if you really want to have good concentration, you need a lot more than a weekend. But anyway, every little bit is good. Every little bit helps. I don't know if you notice it, but even if you're able to keep your attention on the breath for one breath, one inhalation and one exhalation, you probably notice something, that you feel more calm, peaceful, even one breath. Okay, so if you can stay focused on one breath, that's already pretty good. And just making the effort to try to focus. we're a lot better off than most people in the world who aren't even trying to work on their mind. They're just letting their mind go wild with disastrous consequences sometimes. So just trying to do this with a good motivation, with an altruistic motivation, it's fantastic. What we're doing is fantastic, even if it's difficult. So maybe that's enough for tonight, and then I'll carry on tomorrow. Any questions? Anyone like to ask a question? So we have a microphone, if you could, for the people watching. There are people watching, they want to hear your question.
How do you not fall asleep when you're...
How to not fall asleep? Well, go to bed early. Yeah, I mean, make sure you get enough sleep at night. That's one important thing. So maybe you're just really exhausted. You've been working too hard, not getting enough sleep. So that's important. But yeah, if we do want to try to stay awake when we're meditating, and that's another benefit of sitting up straight. Sitting up straight and also keeping the eyes open a little. So if you do find yourself feeling sleepy during meditation and you don't want to go to sleep, make sure your back is straight and your eyes are partially open, so there's light coming in. Another thing you can do is just imagine light. You know, kind of imagine bright, bright sunlight filling you completely all around you. So think of light. So those are things that can help prevent sleepiness. Microphone.
That's different. You had... Is that on? Hello? You had mentioned the body has psychic channels. Was that correct?
Yeah.
Expression? Are they your wind channels, or are they the chakra, 7 chakras?
Yeah. I mean, this is talked about in Tantra.
Okay.
They have like channels running through the body, all through the body, and also chakras at certain points in the central channel. There's this whole system of I use the word psychic because they're not physical. They're not like, you know, you can't see them if you do an autopsy, but they're subtle. It's like a subtle body. But yeah, it said that our mind runs through all these channels in our body, and depending on what we're doing with our body, that will have an effect on the mind. So that's my understanding. That's the reason why it's helpful to keep the back straight rather than bent and slouched. But, you know, you can meditate in any position. You can meditate lying down, standing up, walking. So even if you're sick and you're in bed, you know, you can still meditate. But if we're sitting, it is good to try to sit up straight. And also,
A question from one of our listeners online.
Oh.
Why does it take so much effort to change the mind if it isn't material?
Why does it take effort to change the mind if it's not material? Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is the explanation given by the Tibetan teachers is that our mind has been existing for a really, really long time. In fact, forever. It doesn't have a beginning. It didn't just start when our body did. It was existing before many, 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 many lifetimes. And most of the time, our mind is not in a good state. Most of the time we're not full of love and compassion and wisdom and patience. Instead, we are much more habituated to, much more familiar with disturbing, unpleasant states of mind, like anger, attachment, desire, fear, worry. So the negative or disturbing aspects of the mind are more prevalent, more habitual than the positive ones. Okay, so what comes up in our mind, like right now or today or at any given moment, what's coming up in our mind is what we are most habituated to, what we are most familiar with, what we are used to. Okay, so if you've gotten angry millions of times in your life, maybe you get angry 10 times a day, okay, so that accumulates. So because of familiarity with anger, it will just come up naturally and easily. But on the other hand, if you're someone like the Dalai Lama who's been meditating on compassion his whole life, 80 plus years, and not just this life, but many lives, so because of that effort in thinking of compassion, generating compassion, feeling compassion, then compassion comes up naturally and easily. Okay? So we have to make some effort to have positive states of mind. Otherwise, if we just let our mind run as it normally is, then this is something you have to check for yourself. If you just let your mind go, where will it go? What will it do? Will it have compassion? Will it have love? Will it have peacefulness, patience, and those kinds of things? Or will it have irritation and anger and worry and jealousy and, all that kind of thing? You just check that for yourself. What is most or more prevalent in your mind? Positive thoughts or unhappy, disturbing, negative thoughts? So you might find there's more of the unpleasant ones, and that's normal because of previous conditioning, previous experiences. And so they say, we have to make effort. We have to make effort to have positive thoughts and feelings. We don't have to make effort to get angry. Yeah. To have fear, worry, jealousy. We don't have to make effort to do that. That just comes naturally, effortlessly. But if we want to have good thoughts, for some people, compassion and love and joy may come easily and naturally. Everyone is different. But I don't know for others, but I know for myself, I really have to make effort to have positive thoughts in my mind. And it's because of previous familiarity from past lives. I don't know if that's answering the question or not, but that's the usual explanation.
What's the relationship between mindfulness and concentration? Is mindfulness, or is concentration just really strong mindfulness? They're two mental factors.
Well, I'd like to leave that question till tomorrow, because I'm going to go into what exactly is concentration, and then it's clear. And also, mindfulness has different meanings in different contexts. So in the explanation of concentration, it has a particular meaning, which is somewhat different from the sort of popular contemporary idea of mindfulness as just paying attention to what's happening each moment. So let's leave that for tomorrow. Okay? There's just one other thing I wanted to mention, that is when I spoke about meditating on the breath, I didn't specify where or how to meditate on the breath. And there's different traditions, different explanations about that. It's complicated. But it is said that if for cultivating concentration, it's best to focus at the nostrils or on the upper lip. So if you're very sensitive, you could feel the sensations around the nostrils as the air is going in and out, or on the upper lip, wherever you're able to feel it most clearly and easily. So that's said to be the best place if you want to develop concentration. In some traditions, for example, in Burma, there's the practice of vipassana, mindfulness, and there you're recommended to focus on the rising and falling of the abdomen. So you focus here as your breath is coming in and out. There's a sensation of movement there in the abdomen, kind of going in and out. So that's more recommended in that tradition. And it's more for the purpose of vipassana or mindfulness, which we'll talk about more later. But one teacher whose name is Ajahn Brahm. He's a quite well-known teacher with a lot of experience in meditation and teaching meditation. He said when he first started learning in Thailand, he's from England, but spent many years in Thailand with Ajahn Chah and the forest tradition. He said he heard all these different advice. Oh, you should meditate here, you should meditate on your belly, you should, yeah. And he said his experience was it doesn't really matter where you focus on your breath. He said wherever you can feel it most easily, wherever you can feel your breath most easily. So that's his advice. So I hope this isn't confusing you, but just to let you know there are different traditions saying different things. So you can experiment. That might be the best thing, is just try it out and see what works best for you.
If you keep on having to come back to your breath and not think about anything, I mean, isn't it boring? I mean, isn't that why you Isn't that why we watch
This is a
TV?
problem. Yeah.
Your mind,
This is a
painful.
problem that it's because normally our mind is jumping from one thing to another, not staying with one thing. So yes, when we try to focus on just one thing, the breath or the Buddha, even if it's something really beautiful, really wonderful, our mind gets bored with it. But that's because of habit, because of tendency. And boredom is something we need to deal with. It may not happen to everybody, but probably, yeah, some people do experience it. And what I find is boredom happens because we're not paying attention. If you really pay attention, crank up your attention, really focus on your object, whether it's the breath or the Buddha or whatever, really pay close attention, and what you'll find is it's not boring. You really start to notice little subtle changes that you didn't notice before. If you really focus, really pay attention, your boredom goes away. That's my advice. We can talk more about that later, but try that.